Caitlin Clark and the Fever are in the WNBA playoffs. Can they make a run to the finals? It's safe to say Indiana Fever head coach Christie sides doesn't want to talk about what's floating to the front of fans' minds of late. We can talk about championships in 3 or 4 years, sides told Yahoo Sports last summer, while still months away from winning the draft lottery and half a year before drafting generational talent Caitlin Clark. Aliyah Boston, their 2023 No. 1 pick, had not even lifted her Rookie of the Year trophy yet. At the time, the Fever were deep into year 2 of general manager Lynn Dunn's 3-year plan to rebuild the league's decades-long basement dweller, a plan that has finally come to fruition this season. The Fever, 17-16, clinched their first playoff berth since 2016 on Tuesday night, snapping the tie for the longest playoff drought in league history. They moved up into the No. 6 seed over the weekend and are playing for positioning between the Seattle Storm, 20-13, and the Phoenix Mercury, 16-17, down the season's final 2 weeks. As the league's hottest defense out of the All-Star/Olympic break, and arguably its most prominent franchise this season with millions tuning in regularly to watch Clark, many fans are talking about championships now. But how realistic is that? Let's take a look. Fever peaking at the right time. Indiana is peaking at the right time with a 6-1 record out of the break, and the league's best defensive rating, 111.0, and scoring average, 91.4 peak. Kelsey Mitchell and Clark have been the most formidable backcourt duo since the league resumed last month, ranking second 25p and third 24.5p in scoring respectively. Lexi Hole is shooting 62.1% from three-point range in critical starting minutes after shooting 28.1% before the break. The team leads the league in three-point percentage, 38.9, and threes made, 11.1. The Liberty are second with 9.9. Over the last month, it is the clearest reason the Fever could contend with the best in the playoffs. Everyone is meshing better together and presenting opponents with a much different team than they faced in the first half. And the Fever are collecting wins over some of the league's best: New York, Minnesota, Connecticut, Seattle, and Phoenix. The only team they haven't defeated so far this year is reigning 2-time champion Las Vegas, but they have 2 more shots at it. Historically in the WNBA, champions have been a No. 1 or No. 2 seed. That is in part because of playoff formats that previously heavily favored the league's best with rest, and now lean toward them with home court advantages, which could also favor the Fever, who would likely travel for the first 2 games of a 3-game first-round series, but whose road games have been heavily attended by Fever and Clark fans. Chicago broke the top seeds win it all mold in 2021 when, as a 500 team in the regular season, it rode a No. 6 seed and defeated the No. 5 Phoenix Mercury for the franchise's first and only title. It was an Olympic year and Candace Parker's first in Chicago. There were no Sky players on the Team USA 5x5 roster, allowing them to practice together in the US, same as the 2024 Fever. Pace can trump physicality, size. The Fever are one of the league's best in pace, ranking 4th overall, and have been playing faster since the break than any team currently in playoff position. It's what would make 4-time champion Sue Bird leery of facing Indiana if she was still playing. What I've learned in my WNBA experience is pace of play trumps physicality. Bird said on her A Touch More podcast, it trumps size. It can trump experience, because a lot of times when you're experienced, it's really code word for you're veteran, which is code word for you're old. Bird said the Storm's whole mantra was pace, 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 when the franchise won titles in 2018 and 2020. What I see in Caitlin Clark and What I see in Kelsey Mitchell is they're just ramming it down people's throats, Berth said. And it's really hard. It can have your head spinning. Case in point. And that play, while prolific, is not an anomaly. Clark's ability to fire full-court passes in transition and slip the ball past multiple defenders in the paint led Yahoo to back-to-back national title games after the program had never reached one before her era. The Hawkeyes ranked top 15 in pace both seasons and 26th or better in all 4 seasons of Clark's collegiate career. Of course, pace isn't the be-all indicator of a WNBA champion. Las Vegas ranked top 3 in pace each of the last 7 seasons. They finished second in pace last season, while runner-up New York ranked 5th. The Aces were first in 2022, but the team that was second, the Fever, racing the opposite direction to the best lottery odds. Berth's Seattle teams pushed for pace, but still fell into the second half of the league's best in that category. Youth can also be at detriment. While the youth factor can be an advantage, it hasn't been historically enough to lead a team to a championship. It can trump experience, but it takes a lot more to do over a postseason series than a single game. The Fever's recent starting lineup is among the youngest in the league. Mitchell is the elder stateswoman in her 7th season in Indianapolis. Clark is in her 1st year, Boston is in her 2nd, and Nalissa Smith and Lexi Hole are in their 3rd. None of them have familiarity with the WNBA postseason. Their top competition does, and, in some cases, bear the high touch from it that they'd like to replace. New York, 27-6. Last year's runner-up runs out 4 players with at least 7 years of experience, and all above 4. Breanna Stewart won 2 championships in Seattle with Berth. Vandersloot led the 2021 Sky Champions. Jonquil Jones is well-versed in the pain of losing a finals, first with the Connecticut Sun and again last autumn. Las Vegas battled deep into the playoffs for years, including a 2020 finals loss. Before breaking through, Stewart and Jewel Lloyd learned from 2-time champion Berth in Seattle and exited in the first round back-to-back seasons before winning their first. Washington lost in the finals in 2018, before lifting the trophy the next season. A run to the finals would be historic for Clark and co. Only 2 No.1 overall picks have played in the finals in their first seasons. Tina Thompson, the inaugural top pick in 1997, started for the Houston Comets in the first of their 4 consecutive titles, and Maya Moore won the 2011 championship with Minnesota the year she was drafted first overall. 2024 WNBA title contenders. There are still 5 teams sitting above the Fever in the standings, and most have better cases for title contenders. New York returned all 5 starters and beefed up the bench in an effort to win the franchise's first WNBA title. The Liberty are the most consistent squad with the best defense, and have won throughout the season with starters on the bench due to injury. Indiana is 1-3 against New York, but all 3 losses were within the season's first month, 2 within the first week. Minnesota, 24-9, boasts the best defensive rating and 3-point shooting, led by an experienced and veteran group. The Lynx faltered without MVP candidate Nafisa Collier before the break, but are back to winning out of the break with the league's best record, 7-1. Head coach Cheryl Reeve is a 3-time Coach of the Year and led the Lynx to 4 titles in 7 years in the 2010s. Indiana is 1-1 against Minnesota with a final meeting on Friday in Indianapolis. Connecticut, 24-9, has been on the cusp of its first title for much of the past decade and shored up ahead of the break by adding 3-point shooter Marina Mabrey. The Sun have the second-best net rating to the Liberty. Indiana is 1-3 against the Sun, but again all 3 losses came within the first month, and 2 within the first week. Seattle is in the first season of its super team, adding former champ Nika Ogwumike and all-star point guard Skylar Diggins-Smith to complement Lloyden and Defensive Player of the Year candidate Azy Magbuga. The Storm felt post-break with one of the league's worst records over the last month, but they added Olympic silver medalist Gabby Williams back into the fold. Indiana is 1-3 against Seattle. All three losses came before June 27. And sure, the goings in Las Vegas, 20-12, are rockier than usual, but the Aces are still two-time reigning champions with a dominant MVP in A'ja Wilson, leading the same starting five they've had for two championships. They can't be counted out. And they lead the lead in pace. Indiana lost road games in Las Vegas in May and early July. The Fever host the Aces at home on September 11 and 13. If the season ended on Wednesday morning, the Fever would lock into the No.6 seed and travel to Minnesota for the first two games of a best-of-3 first-round series. While there are factors working in the Fever's favor, at this point of a unique Olympic year season, there's a reason sides is still a couple of years away from wanting to talk about championships.